All right. Good evening, Franconia District, and everyone who's joining us from around the county. I am Matt Reniger. I'm Supervisor Lusk's Chief of Staff, and I'll be the moderator for our Public Safety Town Hall this evening. At the start, I will say that we do have simultaneous interpretation for any Spanish speakers who've joined. In order to access that, you just need to click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. It's the fourth from the right. It says interpretation underneath of it. And if you do that, you'll be able to receive simultaneous Spanish translation throughout the entirety of the program. I want to start by acknowledging the panelists who we'll have with us to answer questions related to public safety this evening. So first we have Supervisor Lusk, the representative for the Franconia District on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, and also the chair of the board's Public Safety Committee. We also have Fairfax County Police Department Chief of Police, Chief Kevin Davis, Dr. Noah Fritz, the Director of Crime Control Strategies and Data Analytics for FCPD. We're joined by Amir Abu El Hawa, the Acting Chief of Staff for Chairman Jeff McKay. And then on standby, we have Captain Lieb of the Franconia District Station, as well as Captain Reef, the station commander for the Mount Vernon District Station, to answer questions and help fill in any blanks at the local and kind of ground operational level as we discuss public safety in Fairfax County this evening. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Lusk for some opening remarks, and then we'll get into the logistics and the functionality of the program as we go forward. Over to you, Supervisor Lusk.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. I'd like to start by thanking all the members of our community who joined us tonight for this discussion. Since coming into office in 2020 and taking over as chair of the board's Public Safety Committee, I've led 2 different town halls in addition to this one that were focused exclusively on public safety. That's not something that was done previously, but I think that we can see from tonight's level of attendance that this is something that our community is interested in and has generated a dialogue that we need to keep open. I also want to thank Chief Davis and the other members of the Fairfax County Police Department who have made themselves available to be a part of this evening's discussion. As I've focused on the work of the Public Safety Committee over the past 2.5 years, I've often reflected on the over 30 years that I've spent working for Fairfax County government. From an entry-level position that I held right out of college to numerous other positions, and now as a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. And across all of that time, one of the few areas of the county that I did not touch prior to coming to the board was public safety. And to be honest with you, in a lot of ways, that's really ended up being an asset, as I've been able to come at a lot of these issues with a fresh set of eyes. Part of tackling the learning curve has been the time that I've spent with our first responders and roll calls, and training exercises, and countless meetings to learn about the challenges that they face in their everyday work while protecting our community. But another big part has been the discussions like the one that we're having here tonight. Most of what we've done on public safety over the past 2.5 years has come directly out of these types of conversations. From the full implementation of our body-worn camera program, to the addition of public meetings for our civilian review panel, to the modernizing of our hiring practices to address staffing challenges within the police and fire departments, to our use of force citizen advisory committee, to our new website, which really focuses on data transparency, and to the implementation of our new co-responder program. I'm proud of the progress that we've made, but I'm more focused on the progress that we still have yet to make. I've made a commitment to all of you to both listen and to also be transparent and available. So that's really what this evening's discussion is here. And that's really what this evening's discussion is all about. So I encourage you to participate, share your views, ask questions, give me the insights I need to continue to work on your behalf with the work of the chief, my colleagues in the Board of Supervisors, and the rest of our first responder community. We will make Fairfax County as safe as possible. So with those introductory remarks, let me turn it over to Chief Davis to give him an opportunity to share some initial comments. And with that, you're up, Chief Davis.
Thank you, Supervisor Lusk, and thank you, Mr. Reniger. I hope my volume is okay.
You're good. We can hear you just fine.
We enjoy these opportunities to interact with our community. Every time we do this, it makes us better. I can say this, I've been a police chief since 2013, and I've had the privilege of serving in leadership positions in 4 large police departments in the DMV. And I've worked with many chairs of public safety committees, and I'll say this, and then not because he's here and hosting this meeting, but I've never worked with a more engaged chair of the public safety committee. And you, Mr. Lust, and your staff, you make us better as well. So thanks for the opportunity. Before I touch, I think on 3 high-profile events that I just want to touch on briefly, I just want to remind everyone that even when we're in an occasional challenging moment, I think it's important for all of us to remember the 1.2, 1.3 million folks who call Fairfax County home are still in one of the safest, largest jurisdictions in America. And the challenges that we have and the challenges we're going to speak about tonight, and I'll say this gently and with all due respect to our jurisdictional peers, our challenges pale in comparison to those that some of our neighbors are facing in the DMV. That doesn't mean that our challenges aren't real. It doesn't mean that we're not taking them seriously. It doesn't mean that we don't have work to do. But when we look at our challenges, they do pale in comparison to some of our neighbors, and we want to keep it that way. So if this is the time I can take maybe 60 to 90 seconds, Supervisor Lusk and Mr. Reniger, to talk about 3 issues that have been in the news of late that undoubtedly have garnered your attention, and justifiably so. We had 2 officer-involved shootings in a relatively short amount of time, and we had a high-profile incident that occurred at a gun call for service at an IHOP. So I'll address the IHOP. We held a press conference last week to address that video that went viral. There was more to the story, and our intention behind that press conference was to provide context. We spend a lot of time with Chairman Lusk's committee and his folks talking about force, use of force. We talk a lot about firearm pointings by police officers. We take that very, very seriously. And we thought it was important enough to share body-worn camera video and to share video captured from a local car dealership that put that matter in perspective. The person that we pointed a firearm at that night was not a passerby. He was involved in the initial call for service for a person with a gun. But we felt it important enough to share that with the community, and hopefully we provided some context. The next 2 issues I want to touch upon just briefly are the officer-involved shooting at Springfield Town Center and the officer-involved shooting in a residential community in McLean. Tomorrow, we are holding a press conference and we're releasing in accordance with our new, and I say new because we've done about 25 new things in the last year. I think sometimes people say, have you done anything new? We've done about 25 real tangible new things in the last year. Some things you can see, touch, and feel. And one of them is a policy that commits your police department, us, to releasing body-worn camera footage within 30 days of an officer-involved shooting. And we intend to do that tomorrow. I think tomorrow is day 20 or so. And we're going to release that. We're going to provide context, and I'll stand ready to answer any questions or concerns. There's an ongoing internal affairs investigation. There's an ongoing major crimes investigation in that matter. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow. The press conference is at 1:00. We'll live stream it. Probably a couple local television stations will as well. And I hope you get a chance to see that. The second one I'll just briefly touch on. Again, ongoing active investigation occurred in a residential community in McLean. This person undoubtedly was experiencing a mental health crisis. Some of the questions that I anticipate tonight will have to do with our commitment to the co-responder program that the Board of Supervisors, Chairman McKay, County Executive Brian Hill, Deputy County Executive Tom Arnold are really standing shoulder to shoulder with us, and we're getting bigger and better with it. We're committed to co-responders. In fact, the co-responder did respond out to that first call for service that night in McLean. Since I've been police chief here, 4 of our 5 officer-involved shootings involve someone in mental health or behavioral crisis. So we realize that's an issue. We've gone so far as to issue electronic control weapons, otherwise known as tasers, to each and every second lieutenant and below who's in patrol or otherwise serves in an operational capacity. We're one of the first departments in the entire country to feature a restraining device called BOLA wrap. BOLA wrap is something that wraps a person. It's about 6 feet of nylon string, and it wraps around a person, so we can take someone safely into custody. We're one of just a handful of police departments in the country to do that. But I'll have that officer-involved shooting press conference in a week or so. And I just want to mention before I move on from those 3 high-profile events and say this. Recently, your police department, FCPD, we're the 32nd largest police department in the country. And we're part of a group called Major Cities Chiefs. And they're the largest 70 city and county police departments in the nation. And a big topic of conversation at a recent gathering of big city and big county police chiefs surrounded the idea that now in 2022, police chiefs are able to go on the scene of an officer-involved shooting, and they're able to see with more clarity than ever before what just happened by watching body-worn camera footage. And we're able to then make some preliminary assessments from watching that body-worn camera footage. So those preliminary assessments, those observations that the community expects me to make, expects me to call balls and strikes, those don't take the place of an investigation. So those preliminary observations and assessments that police chiefs, to include myself, make after viewing body-worn camera footage don't take the place of an investigation by detectives. They don't take the place of a review by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. In fact, just today, we got a letter of declination from Commonwealth Attorney Steve Descano regarding the IHOP incident. They're declining to pursue any criminal charges against Fairfax County police officers. We've received those letters of declination for the officer-involved shootings that have occurred in the last year as well. So I'm kind of stuck, and police chiefs in America are stuck in this new normal where there's a community expectation that leadership will comment on what just happened, but there has to be communicated, and we need to continue to make it a priority to communicate to folks that there is an investigation that's associated with each and every one of these incidents. So I just wanted to touch on that to let you know that is not. And I will pause there before I go into the other recruiting and retention and crime trends and patterns remarks. I think I'll pause there, Mr. Reiniger.
So that's okay, Chief. I think what we can do now is if you have additional stuff to share or any of the additional panelists want to make comments, we'll do that now, and then we'll move to the Q&A. Just as a reminder for anyone who's just joined us, because I think we've about doubled in attendance since the remarks began. If you need simultaneous interpretation, there's the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, fourth from the right. And if you click on that, you can move over to simultaneous Spanish translation. But I'll hand it back to you, Chief. We'll move through the stuff. We'll move through any presentations that you and your fellow panelists have, and then we'll move into Q&A.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll move expeditiously because I think the best part of this is going to be the interaction and the Q&A. No doubt about it. But I'll touch on our biggest challenge and our biggest opportunity, and that's recruiting and retention. And Chairman McKay and the Board of Supervisors has been supportive. They are aware of our challenges. Recruiting nationally, police applicants across the country, and America has 18,000 police departments. According to the Police Executive Research Forum, which is the think tank of American policing, applicants are down 64% across the country, 64%. So we're challenged by that as well in Fairfax County. And just a few years ago, we used to have 4,500 applicants a year. Last year, we only had about 1,600. So we have fewer applicants. There's a number of different reasons for that. That would be an entirely different town hall meeting. But because of that, we're trying to be creative and innovative. One of the areas that we're doing quite well in spite of our ability to numerically attract applicants, is our diversity in hiring. both gender and race. We signed on to a campaign pledge called 30 by 30. It's a pledge police chiefs across the country are taking to ensure that 30% of our police academy classes are at least 30% female by the year 2030. The class that we just put in this past Monday is 37% female, 37%. The last 4 police academy classes since I've been here serving as chief have been averaging 27% female. Our diversity, by race, African American, Asian, Hispanic applicants or recruit officers in the academy, it's double the percentage that exists with our incumbent police officers. So we're doing quite well with gender diversity recruiting. We're doing quite well with racial diversity recruiting. We're challenged by attracting people to the profession. And we're all in that together. I mean, everybody is a recruiter, even the people on this call tonight. Even if you're occasionally frustrated with your police department, you can still be a recruiter for us because the people you know will probably make us better. So if I could pause there, Matt, and show for the very first time, have Major Corey debut a 30-second commercial that's about to go viral countywide. I'd love for him to press play and do that, Major.
Yep, go right ahead. Hear that?
Policing, it's a calling. You are there to protect people. You are there to help people have a voice.
I wake up every day loving what I do, and every day is an opportunity to experience something that I've never experienced before.
I wanted to be part of something big. Like anyone asked me, what do you want to do? I want to be a police officer. And that just never changed.
This is a place to come to if you want to be the police. Patrol, it's detectives, it's canine, it's SWAT, search and rescue teams. Any discipline that policing has to offer is available with our police department.
We have the best police academy training available in Virginia. We have a top-notch, state-of-the-art training center to prepare him or her as a law enforcement officer.
I really relied on the training that was here. I realized coming from another agency and coming to Fairfax County that their training was a lot more in-depth. I think eventually when you leave this department, you definitely are more marketable out there with just the reputation of Fairfax County and the experience you get.
Fairfax County is very diverse. Their arms are very open to new people.
We always want to help people. We always want to connect with people. And what Fairfax does really well is to embrace different cultures.
I look for police officers with passion, compassion, empathy, earnest desire to contribute to your community is ultimately going to be successful as a Fairfax County police officer. We need young people to consider policing as a profession. There's nothing that we don't offer. There's no commitment that we're not willing to make to your personal well-being. But we want to invest in the young men and women who decide to put their hand in the air and put on this uniform. If you invest in us, we'll invest in you.
Okay, thanks for bearing with us on that. We think that's going to hopefully set us apart from the crowd a bit. So into crime trends and patterns, and I know a lot of questions have to do with crime trends, patterns, disorder, and Dr. Fritz is going to say a few words about his role on the FCPD and the data-driven commitment by the police department that I know is very important rather to Supervisor Lusk and his team. If we're doing things, it has to be data-driven. So crime trends and patterns, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to pull up where we are as a county. Now, this is countywide. I shared with Supervisor Lusk and the rest of the board that by Labor Day, we're going to have, for the very first time ever, crime broken down into magisterial districts. I know Supervisor Lusk serves constituents both in the Franconia Police District and the Mount Vernon District, and he's going to have, for the first time, Lee Magisterial District statistics.
Franconia, Chief, Franconia District.
Franconia. Is that, you know, I want to be correct. Is it Franconia now?
Yeah, we're Franconia.
Okay, Franconia. So we're almost there. So just bear with us a little about another month. So this shows you where we are countywide in the crime categories. Every crime category matters to everyone on this call. But if you look up at robberies and burglaries and motor vehicle thefts, larcenies from motor vehicles, larcenies of motor vehicle parts, and assaults, you can see over the last 5 years, there's really not a stark increase, with the exception of the one category I want to hit on first. Larceny. Larceny is synonymous with theft of motor vehicle parts. The reason for that, and I hope nobody on this call has experienced this, is the theft of catalytic converters. Every car has a catalytic converter. It contains precious metals, and they're being stolen nationwide at a rate that they've never been stolen before. So you'll see that jump. So both police districts are experiencing that, and you'll hear from both captains in a second. So we've formed a catalytic converter task force. We've recently slowed down the theft of these catalytic converters. We arrested a couple crews out of North Carolina and Maryland. You'll also see that, if I can draw your attention to the upper left category with robbery. Robbery is the unlawful taking of property from a person by threat or by force or threat of force. Our robberies are challenging us this year because post-COVID, a lot of commercial establishments, particularly the big ones, are tasking their loss prevention officers with challenging shoplifters. And a lot of our shoplifters now, we refer to as boosters, because they go in typically more than one person at a time, and they grab a large quantity of high value items, whether they're sunglasses or coats or drills or power tools, and they try to leave at once. So loss prevention officers now throughout the county and throughout the region are challenging these thieves who are guilty of the crime of theft and shoplifting, and the thieves are resisting their efforts to take the property back, which turns the theft into a robbery. So their shoplifting events gone bad, and that's caused a little bit of a spike in our robbery numbers. If you look at our motor vehicle thefts, our motor vehicle thefts are as high as they've been ever in Fairfax County, and we have, because of that, established an auto crimes enforcement team. It's a team of one supervisor and 5 detectives, and all they do is tackle the crime of motor vehicle thefts in the county. They hit every area of the county, no matter where you live. Our motor vehicle thefts were up at the end of March by a percentage of about 45%. Since we created this auto theft team, our auto thefts are now up by 16%. So they've really put a dent in the rate of auto thefts. The vast majority of our stolen cars in Fairfax County are recovered in Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County, the vast majority. So we're working with the Metropolitan Police Department, we're working with Prince George's County and Montgomery County to get a better handle on who it is who are stealing these cars. It's typically young men, but we have a strategy now and we didn't have one before. And speaking of strategy, if I can ask Dr. Fritz to briefly explain his role, which is new, again, last year with the police department, that's allowing us to be better informed by data. So everything we do, we're able to back it up with data-driven reasons. Dr. Fritz.
Good evening, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've been doing this for about 30 plus years. And I got started back in the first crime house in the state of Arizona in 1989. And all I can tell you is it's an honor to be working here at Fairfax County Police Department with this crew and some of the things we're trying to improve on an already excellent police department through what the chief and we all refer to as a data-driven approach, which in essence is really about doing informed, actionable decision-making and an evidence-based approach, which really just implies best practice, whether we're talking about enforcement strategies or crime prevention strategies and the combination of those to reduce crime and victimization. One of the key things we introduced and Chief Davis introduced when he first got here and I got tasked with was standing up what's called the ComStep process. We call it CORE. And part of that initiative is to create a virtual crime center where we have crime data and operational data at our fingertips, and we're building that as we speak. We're also working on realigning the crime analysis unit and to develop SMEs, subject matter experts, and build their expertise through training and recruitment as well, to really target what I refer to as the 4 Ps, to stay focused on people, which is chronic serious offenders and repeat victims, patterns and series or places, hotspots, and finally, reoccurring problems that occur throughout the county. Lastly, I'll just say, and the chief mentioned it, we're working on developing some applications to allow us to look at the data geographically on a number of different levels. One of those would be some of the board of supervisor districts, and break that data out and make it available in, I won't say quite real time, because there's a process in investigations. We want to make sure we get the data out that's accurate and timely to the public, and then the public facing FC pod, which is where we put a lot of our community policing data, arrest, citation, use of force data, and we're building that out as well, working with local community advocacy groups to make that happen. So again, honored to be here, and if you've got questions, happy to answer those a little bit later.
Thanks, Dr. Fritz. And I'll pause, Mr. Rediger, if you want me to go to the Captain Reef and Captain Lee, we can do that now, or we can save it for Q&A.
No, I mean, we should move. Some of the questions that we're getting in the chat and submitted, you all have answered through your presentations. So I think we should complete the presentations and then we'll move to the questions.
Okay. So again, while we're on this crime slide here, you can see that there's a marked spike in the theft of motor vehicle parts. That's one motor vehicle part. That's catalytic converters. So a couple of our district commanders have partnered with local auto body shops to engrave names and telephone numbers and identifying marks on these catalytic converters. That might not prevent them from being stolen, but it can certainly help us identify the person who was victimized by the crime when we recover the catalytic converters. So we'll continue to work really hard on that. I think it's important when we speak about crime trends and patterns to not just take a year by year look, because some percentages can be deceiving if you just go year by year. But if you look at the last 5 years in these major crime categories, you'll see that there really is not been a marked increase in crime in Fairfax County. Where we are with homicides this year, we are at 13 year to date. Of our 13 year to date homicides, 6 of the 13 have absolutely been positively been domestic related. We saw that trend in 2021. In fact, we finished 2021 with 21 murders, and a third of those 21 murders, and you probably heard me say this before, a third were adult children killing their elderly parents in their homes. The children were despaired, depressed, anxious, otherwise suffering from behavioral mental health crisis. That's what's really inspired the chairman and the board to push the need for us to be world-class in the co-responder program. And we're working really hard at that. So that's a journey, and we're going to get there. And no doubt we'll be the best in the country. Then I'll just, there's so much I can talk about, but I want to respect your time and your ability to ask questions. Our training commitment, and again, this is all new in Fairfax County. We're doing a procedural justice implicit bias training for all of our police officers. We're teaching a gold standard use of force training called ICAT, Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics, recommended again by UTSA study. I did it years ago in another jurisdiction. And we're also partnered with Georgetown University with a former Obama DOJ official named Christy Lopez. And she and her peers have developed a peer intervention program called ABLE, Active Bystandership by Law Enforcement. And it teaches and requires and demands, and in fact, our policy now demands any police officer to intervene when they observe misconduct afoot, regardless of the rank of the person engaged in the misconduct. So that's not only a policy change that's, again, new to Fairfax County, but it's going to take a cultural shift. And we think this training will support the cultural shift. So Matt, I'll pause there, and you tell me now or later if you want to go to the real subject matter experts, Captain Leib and Captain Reef.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move to our station commanders. And what I'll say, because I do see some questions about it in the chat, just so folks understand. Once we move past that part, we'll go into the formal Q&A section. And how that will work is I'll prompt the questions. So I'll call on a person and I'll let you all know who the next person up is who wants to ask a question. In order to designate yourself as someone who wants to ask a question, and you can begin to do this now, just hover over the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen and click the raise hand option, which is the bottom bar underneath the different options that pop up under that when you click on it. I will note that across all the platforms that we're on right now, we have over 120 participants in this call. And in advance of this call, we probably received more questions than we were going to be able to answer anyway. And there are already more questions submitted on top of that. So we will try to prioritize people who are live here on the call and want to ask a question, because that's the interactive portion of the town hall. But what we would plan on doing is any questions that we don't get to, we're going to record those. We're going to download the chat. So any questions that are put in the chat we'll have, all the questions that were submitted ahead of time we'll have, and any that people want to email, and our team will put the email in the chat here that we receive subsequent to this. We'll work really hard to get you all a response in writing to every question, and we'll post those on the fairfaxcounty.gov police updates website, the data and transparency set that we have, and our team will also put that URL in the chat. But I just want everyone to understand we're going to try to get to as many as we can. We'll probably only go to each person one time and ask that you only ask one question. I know some folks have submitted several already, and we'll try to get to as many folks as possible, but we will get answers to all the questions that were submitted. So begin to raise your hands if you'd like, and we'll begin to move through the list after the next two presentations. So back to you, Chief.
To Captain John Leib, who's the commander of the Franconia district. Just in case people don't know, we've done this. We've also committed to our internal constituents and the community. We've established some liaison police officers with the LGBTQ community. We're establishing a Muslim liaison, and James Krause, who used to be the commander of the Franconia district, who is promoted effective 2 weeks from today to the rank of major, is now serving in a new role at headquarters as our community outreach commander. So we want to have greater visibility throughout the county from a headquarters perspective. Major Krause is doing that for us. So I'll turn it over first to Captain John Leib, and he'll talk about some things going on in the Franconia district.
All right, thank you, Chief Davis, and thank you, Supervisor Lusk, for this opportunity. It's an honor to be here and to share some level of insight and answer any questions that you have. The Franconia crime picture largely mirrors that of the county that Chief Davis just briefed on. It's those offenses where we have developed district level strategies that I want to share some basic insight into. So a few examples: robberies in the Franconia district are up year to date. That increase levels out when you look at the 5-year average, but those cases do remain a concern for us for all of the reasons that the chief just discussed, in particular our commercial robberies. In response to that, we looked at some of the policies of some of our retailers, especially in and around the town center, and they vary widely. So we took the initiative to schedule a retail outreach symposium in September. We invited our retailers, our loss prevention personnel, and not only local representation, but regional and even corporate representation in some cases to join us, learn about the FCPD, understand the nuances of retail crime in our district. Right, we have a dedicated team of officers that work exclusively in and around the town center. We're in close proximity to the beltways. Our metro station certainly plays a role in terms of looking at this through a crime prevention, through environmental design perspective. And we really want to figure out best practices. So mall ownership will be present, mall security, subject matter experts from within the FCPD, including financial crimes detectives, our special operations division, to have active violence incident conversations, industry experts from the Mid-Atlantic Organized Retail Crime Alliance, the National Retail Federation, and others. So we're really excited about this event. Again, it's a data-driven project, and one that we believe will result in a favorable measurable result when we're done. I want to move on to one more project, and I'll turn it over to Captain Reeve. I recently established a full-time traffic enforcement and outreach position at the Franconia district. The traffic enforcement part of the duties is self-explanatory, but the traffic and vehicle-related outreach that is expected of this position is directly related to the series and the trends and the patterns for crimes involving vehicles, right? The larcenies for motor vehicles, the larceny of motor vehicle parts, and stolen autos, all of which the chief just briefed on. The outreach we provide at the district level has already become more consumable, more actionable. We have found that it's one thing to say, watch out for suspicious activity, or see something, say something. Here, we're going to tell you what suspicious activity looks like, specific to recent events, specific to where these events are happening. Dr. Fritz spoke of the 4 Ps, people, places, patterns, and problems, and providing public insight into those categories is what we're striving to achieve with this new position at the Franconia district. I'll leave you with a good example of this already working. Commercial truck dealerships in our district, we proactively provided outreach regarding an identified trend in our district that showed catalytic converter thefts deviating to some extent from Toyota Prius model vehicles to commercial trucks. And one dealership in particular decided to remove catalytic converters from trucks on his lot until they were purchased. And that's an invasive measure, but a crime prevention measure nonetheless, and one that was a product of our data-backed outreach that we provided. Traffic and parking more generally, if you've submitted a concern over the last 2 months, if you receive our newsletter or any of my posts on Nextdoor, you know that traffic safety is a priority. We're handling these complaints more like an investigation as opposed to a one-time dispatched call for service. And I've already introduced through my postings the idea for a traffic town hall type event this fall where we can provide substantive updates to those traffic cases. So I'll pause there. Happy to answer any additional questions as we move forward, but I'll turn it over to Captain Reeve.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Reef, and I'm the captain of the Mount Vernon District Station. I've been assigned for almost a year. I appreciate you letting us come in and talk about the districts and some of the things that we're doing, like Captain Liebert said. One of the biggest issues, our highest to date in the district right now, is like the chief had mentioned, our larceny of motor vehicle parts. In Mount Vernon, we've seen an uptick in actual airbag thefts. So we've noticed through the patterns, when we talk about trends and patterns, that between 2018 and 2020 Honda type vehicles, Accords, Civics, they are the ones that are being targeted for our airbag thefts. One night we had a professional crew come into the district and take almost 40 airbags in one shot. They definitely did their homework. They came in, they went to places where there was no camera systems, very little evidence that could have been produced for our detectives. But our officers showed up, they took DNA swabs, and they collected as much evidence as they could to further the investigation. We had noticed that from doing some investigations that these airbags can be removed from vehicles in under 1 minute. They go in and they remove them right from the dash with a small screwdriver, and they're gone. So what have we done? We've done more community outreach through our Nextdoor. Mount Vernon, we were fortunate to have a community outreach officer and a community outreach position that continually would pump out information, because we found that with larceny from motor vehicles, either the parts or the actual stuff that's in the vehicle, that close to 75 to 80% of the vehicles are unlocked. So we are encouraging the community to lock their vehicles, take their valuables out. If they can't see them, they won't get into the car. If the doors are unlocked, and they won't go into the vehicles and just rummage through stuff. So that is like our major concern. We do have we've had an uptick in robberies in the district. And like the chief and Captain Liebert said, that some of those are commercial robberies, or I'm sorry, they're larcenies that end up turning into robberies. But like Captain Liebert said, we're trying to address that at a level within the businesses to see what their policies are and try to get ahead of that. I know, for example, we have worked intimately with Home Depot and Lowe's and talking to them about their policies and revamping them to make sure that we have, if the larcenies will not turn into robberies when they try to engage the people that are leaving the store. So
We are continuing to do proactive patrols. We have some of our issues that have already been brought to my attention from community members, or parking issues that we have up in the Beacon Hill area. We have a parking enforcement officer that was recently hired with the police department, which is nice. But we are in the process of hiring a retired police officer that should be starting within 30 days at the district to combat these parking enforcement issues at the north end of 1 or wherever they're brought to our attention. We continue to have officers go out and do the proactive patrols to engage in any kind of traffic enforcement. And we have 2 motorcycle officers from our motor division that are assigned to the district, and they come. So if you have any kind of traffic issues, parking issues, anything like that, you can email the commander inbox and I will forward it to the resources that we have. Or you can call our non-emergency number and we can handle it from there. So those are some of the things that are going on at Mount Vernon Station. I have an open door policy. If you want to come into the station, if I'm working, I will be more than happy to meet with you and talk to you. So thank you for the time to let me speak.
All right, before we jump into the Q&A portion, 2 things real quick, Chief, if we could stop sharing from your side, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And then I just saw one thing popped up in the chat that I'll just address quickly. I think there was a little bit of confusion, just so folks understand. The Franconia district overlaps not perfectly with 2 different districts for the police. So the Mount Vernon station and the Franconia station both cover space in the Franconia district. So we are talking about issues in Franconia, but both stations respond to issues in Franconia. So that's why we had the station commanders from both stations. So we'll move to the question and answer portion of the program now. I'll call on folks and then let the next person who's up know that they're in the queue as well, so you can get prepared. Just as a reminder, there's no possible way we're going to be able to get to all the questions that we have already. I'm going to try to prioritize folks who have their hand up and can ask a question live here, because we want to take advantage of the town hall setting, but we'll do everything we can to get answers to all the other written questions that we've received. So we're going to begin with a question from Supervisor Lusk, and then Lisa Jones, you'll have the next question. So over to you, Supervisor Lusk.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. I'll go very quickly. This question is for Chief Davis. I heard you make reference to the co-responder model a couple of times in your introductory comments, and I just wanted to make a couple of points first. One, honored to have had the opportunity to work with Supervisor Alcorn to bring the co-responder program forward to the Board of Supervisors. Honored also to see that we've been able to do 2 micro pilots around the co-responder model, working first with the 911 dispatch to figure out how to triage calls to make sure that we know if there's any issue around mental health or behavioral health as it relates to alcohol and substance abuse. We would look at those calls and have them include both a community services board person as well as the police. And I know that we've also gotten approval, which I think is great, in the most recent budget allocation for about 20 additional behavioral health positions. We think this is important, obviously, in making our community safer. And I know that the police, who we've had the opportunity to talk in roll calls, prefer having this opportunity because, you know, it's hard for them to deal with these types of situations. So I just wanted to ask, you know, how are we doing with this implementation, and kind of where are we with the deployment of this co-responder model?
Thank you, Supervisor Les. We're in phase 1 right now. As we move into phase 2, and we're working closely with the Community Services Board. They are actively in the process of hiring several clinicians. The clinicians, just as a reminder to everyone, will literally ride in the police car with our patrol officers, and they will respond to calls in one of 2 ways. It'll be a mental health and behavioral crisis call for service. The 911 call taker, the dispatcher, will recognize it and they will dispatch them to it, or the police officer and the clinician can recognize some of the verbiage and other clues in the dispatch call for service and head there on their own. So we anticipate, as we go deeper into the various phases, that we'll have police officers and clinicians available countywide more and more often as we move deeper into the co-responder program. I think it's important to do it right, and the county is doing it right. We can do it quick and get it wrong. I think we're we're doing it the right way. And like Supervisor Lusk said, police officers want it. They really, really do. It's kind of like body cameras. The community wants body cameras. The cops want body cameras. The community wants clinicians. We want clinicians too. They really serve to be very helpful. There was a man, and you all may have been stuck in traffic 2 days ago. There was a man and the parkway was shut down. He ultimately, sadly, ended up taking his own life, but we responded to that scene. And while the clinician wasn't immediately available to interact with the man because he was armed with a firearm, we had a clinician on the telephone interacting with him. He answered his cell phone. So there's numerous ways that clinicians can interact with people while they're keeping themselves safe and the community safe. So we're looking forward to it. And before too long, Fairfax County will be the model.
Hey, great. We're going to move to our first community question. Final reminder, if you want to ask a question in real time to the chief or any of the other guests that we have, it's just the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and you can click raise hand. We're going to go to Lisa Jones. So Lisa, you're on deck for your question, followed by Pam Vandenberg. And I'll just say, Lisa is here representing a group of people. So we're going to give you just, 45 seconds to a minute, Lisa, to just introduce who the group is here you're representing and ask your question so we can get to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Chief Davis, thank you to you and your team for being here tonight. My name is Lisa Jones, and I'm co-chair of the Community Plus Safety Working Group. This group is part of a strong collaboration network centered on the community and its 5 priorities. The priorities are children, youth, and well-being, economic opportunity, health, neighborhood livability, and of course, safety. So our group is trying to make sure we empower the community to drive the influence for safety decisions while they feel safe in accessing those safety resources without feeling ashamed or even scared. So the purpose of the group is to help make recommendations through community dialogue. And we have started doing that by developing a survey, which the survey may be in the link, but we started to develop the survey to capture the safety concerns within those questions, okay? So our group wants to be a bridge between the community residents and the police department. And just so you know, our group is made up of community residents, Fairfax County officials to include the Fairfax County Police Department, as well as the U.S. Immigration Office. So our question is, as you and your team start to find the barriers or discover the barriers to good police community relations, what steps will you guys begin to take and implement in order to make sure that police and community relationship is good, to be able to build trust within the community?
Well, thank you, Lisa, for all that you do, number one, and I'll touch on opioids at the end. One of the things that we're doing right now, present tense, is we realize that community policing is more than just one Tuesday in August once a year at National Night Out. That's a great event. It's wonderful, but that's not community policing. So what we've seen is there are real community outreach efforts that happen in all 8 of our patrol district stations, but we've never had a real concentration from headquarters. We've never had a unified approach to community policing. Every district station did it a little bit differently. So, and that's okay, because every community is different. There are different cultures, different ways of connecting across the county. But now with Major Krause here at headquarters, he's going to look holistically across the county and identify some programs, initiatives, connections, and relationships that we need to have, whether it's faith or business or cultural or educational or otherwise. And we're going to go about the business of getting those things established. So that might sound like gobbledygook, but we're taking a headquarters approach. We're taking ownership. It's not just the responsibility of the 8 district commanders to have relationships with the community. It's our responsibility here as well. And that kind of segues into your comments about opioids. We're one of the only police departments in the country, if not the only police department in the country, that has a full-time overdose squad. We have a supervisor and several detectives. All they do is respond to non-fatal and fatal overdoses. That's all they do. And I believe August the 4th, Supervisor Lusk is hosting another town hall style meeting but we're going to talk in depth about that. So I won't steal the thunder of that August 4th event, but I'll say this, where we are with non-fatal overdoses this year compared to last, countywide, we have 129 non-fatal overdoses this year. Last year, we had 162. So we're down, but still not acceptable. And countywide, we have 34 fatal overdoses this year versus 49 the same time last year. So that's progress, but there's still a lot more progress, particularly with young people. And I think there's a question that I peeked and saw in the queue about Narcan. All of our police officers carry Narcan. We save people, we revive people suffering from an overdose all the time. Our cops carry Narcan, we carry tourniquets, we carry other emergency kits that save people's lives. We view ourselves as first responders, as does our fire and rescue department. Sometimes fire and rescue is on the scene first, sometimes we're there first, but we now have a greater capacity than ever before to save lives of people who are literally dying in front of us. And when we get to a lot of these overdoses, Lisa, you probably know many, many tragic stories, we have to be able to save someone's life. And the Good Samaritan law, of course, is in effect. We're not going to victimize someone twice. But we're looking forward to that August 4th event and looking forward to partnering with you.
Thank you.
Great. We're gonna keep moving as quickly as we can. So Pan Vanderberg, you are up, and Karen Kennard, you'll be next.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the department for your enforcement of speeding and road racing along the Beulah area and along the Telegraph area. I'm in the Kingstown area down here. And since we've had some community meetings, your officers were very responsive to our needs. And we've noticed drastically different because of that enforcement. And additionally, since this new law has passed regarding loud exhaust systems, hopefully that will enhance your enforcement capabilities as well there. My question is twofold. How many officers are assigned to our area in Franconia? And what is your strategy when surging your resources to mitigate criminal threats in our area?
Well, Pam, thank you. We'll tag team this, and I'm going to pick Mr. Renner's too. We're going to try to be brief. There's a lot to that question. Resources are always a challenge for police departments. So I may have not mentioned earlier that our vacancy rate stands at about 138 police officers. So added to that 138 are 51 recruit officers who are in the academy. So when you add those two numbers together, our operational vacancy number is about 189, about 9.2%. So patrol remains the backbone of this police department and any police department worth their weight. So patrol is the commitment. So I'll turn it over to Captain Lee. Every district commander has the authority and the discretion to be innovative and creative with the manpower, personnel power, man and woman power that they have. And they have to be available to always answer 911 calls for service, non-emergency calls for service, and respond to crimes in progress. But beyond that, the creativity of these district commanders is theirs to apply. So, Captain, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. And thank you, Chief. This is our traffic concern database, and I printed it out before I got here today. But I mentioned earlier, each traffic concern that is received through phone call, through email, through Nextdoor, we treat like an investigation. We don't just ask an officer to slide by and write a ticket or issue a parking summons. We treat it like an investigation. It gets a case file. We discuss it during weekly crime and traffic meetings. And what was most important to me when I set the expectations for this program was that we provide that wraparound service, because all too often we were doing the work, but we weren't connecting back with the community who lived with and felt that problem every day. So that is a priority that we provide those results back to you. We keep you well informed. Regarding the combating crime in our district, we touched on the data-backed approach. We've asked our crime prevention officer and our community outreach officer to operationalize their duties and to do it in alignment with our station CompStat process. And so each morning following a critical incident, a burglary, a significant event in our district, generally speaking, our crime prevention officer and our outreach officer are there the next morning to assess the security posture of a business or of a home, provide insight how to improve their situation and whatever other services they need. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Karen Kennard next. So Karen, you have the floor, and then we will go to Diane Alejandro.
Okay, thank you. And Chief Davis, I appreciate your press conferences and transparency, and particularly talking about the issue of the young men who were killing parents and siblings and domestic violence. I'm wondering how you would evaluate short-term activities that might help, maybe the red flag laws, or if people have come to you on other trends and more county services could do to prevent and pick this up early.
Karen, thank you, Karen. I'm jotting notes, trying to keep up with your question. So I'll be talking first about the Emergency Substantial Risk Order, the ESRO, otherwise sometimes known as Virginia's version of the red flag law. We compare the number of ESRO, Emergency Substantial Risk Order events in Fairfax County versus all of our surrounding Northern Virginia jurisdictions, and we lead the way. Every time we have probable cause to take a dangerous firearm out of someone's home because that person is a threat to himself or herself or family or community or others, we apply through a magistrate to temporarily seize those firearms from the home. And we're doing that at a much greater rate than we ever have before. The chairman and the board of supervisors are behind this effort. I think they've spoken publicly about it a number of different times. We actually have a detective who is assigned to daily track ESRO events, and we think that's important. And remind the other piece of your question.
But before you move to the other piece, Chief, I apologize because Supervisor Lusk is still technically a panelist. I just want to throw it to him for an extra 30 seconds because this is another item Supervisor Lusk has done a board matter on. And maybe you could provide a quick update on what we're doing specifically with the ESRO.
Yeah, so I'll go quickly, and thank you and appreciate the comments that were made by the chief. The red flag law in Fairfax County is one that myself and James Walkinshaw from Braddock District helped bring before the board, and we're excited that we're going to have a campaign specifically that will have individuals know more about this red flag law and how they can speak up if they see something, because I think this is really important. This program is only going to work if folks know who to call and when to call. So we are developing a campaign that's going to unveil here in Fairfax County very soon. So I think, Karen, you'll probably appreciate that this is something that's on our radar. We've been very focused on it, and I think it's going to make a difference. And I even made the point, I think I made the point that even if we can save one life, we've done something substantial here. So
there'll be a signage campaign, Karen, that's going live on every county bus and county facilities and across the Inova hospital system. If you want to learn more about what we're doing specifically on this, we have a partnership with a nonprofit organization called Safer Country. You can go to safercountry.org to see the resources and information, and our staff will put that in the chat. So now we'll go to Diane and Adrian Steele. You're on deck. And again, for the folks who put questions down, we're trying to prioritize those that have raised their hands so we can have the interactive nature of the town hall. But if we get through everyone who's raised their hands, I will read your questions from the chat. Over to you, Diane.
Thank you. Supervisor Lusk, thank you for holding this. It's really a public service, and thank you, Chief, for your participation. That's invaluable. I want to circle back to the pointing a gun issue. And as you know, UTSA and the Community Advisory Committee both recommended treating pointing a gun as a use of force. I want to sidestep that legal issue. I know you have views that you cannot do that as a legal matter. Let's put that to one side. It is a horrible event. When it happens, it undoubtedly is necessary, and I don't want to get into the specifics of IHOP, but it's an event that you all track. We would like that data to be made public, and we would also ask that you consider having an investigation that is of the same breadth as the use of force, and that it is subject to the same kind of review that a use of force would be. In other words, that it be subject to review by the civilian review panel. I know we'd have to get the board involved in that. That it be subject to review by the independent public police auditor. So you can treat it with the gravity that it has, and I know you believe that it is serious, but from the public perspective, that would give us a lot more transparency in what's going on with pointing guns.
Well, thank you, Diane, very much. I'm not sure we can ever put legal matters aside, but we do take a pointing of a firearm by a police officer very seriously. Most police departments, and I think you know this, don't even track the pointing of a firearm. In fact, the Fairfax County Police Department just started tracking the number of times a Fairfax County police officer points a firearm at another person. We just started that in 2018, and we're getting better and better at tracking it. Our training is better and better than it ever has been, and I'm proud of our training. And sometime this fall, Diane, and I know you weren't able to make the last use of force community day we had back in late March, but we're going to have another one this fall. And we spend a lot of time at that use of force community day going over the pointing of a firearm, not only why and when it happens, but how we deal with it internally and how we treat it so seriously as we should, and how we review each and every instance. So that's a commitment. I think we stand shoulder to shoulder with that commitment. We take it seriously. It's a serious thing, and it gets our attention. And it was so serious that I felt it necessary to have a press conference last week to address our community about it. So I think we're like-minded in this regard.
This is also something that the board is actively, I think, discussing at different iterations as well, and we'll continue to discuss. Adrian, we'll go to you, and then Nicole Miller, and then I'm going to begin to pull questions from the chat. Over to you, Adrian.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about the chief and thank Supervisor Lusk and the chief and his colleagues for joining. Something about the process. I don't want to turn to the facts of the three incidences, but I think it might be helpful to the public if we had a clear understanding of the process of what happens in each of these three situations. I understand, and we understand from the work that's been done, that routinely confidentiality notices are issued when there's an incident, a serious use of force incident, or maybe just a use of force incident. And there's also a restriction on the viewing of body-worn cameras, video footage before the officers and even the witness officers are interviewed. Can you confirm that's the practice? And did that happen on all three of these incidences?
So thank you, Adrian. It's good to see you. I think you started off by saying you didn't want to talk about these three incidents.
Well, no, we're talking about process. I'm talking about process, Chief.
No, you are, and that's okay. It's okay, because I'm going to answer it. So the police officers involved in the two most recent officer-involved shootings were not, and I repeat, Adrian, were not permitted to look at the body-worn camera footage before they were interviewed. So hopefully that answers that question. But let me add one thing to this, and it's more food for thought than anything else. There's going to be an occasion where we may not interview a police officer for weeks or months for a variety of reasons. We also have a policy that commits us to share body-worn camera footage with the community.
That's right.
So you understand, and I know you've been doing this for a long time, that there's a bit of a conundrum there, because we're going to share it with the community, and the officers will have an opportunity to see it just like every other member of our community. So we realize that reality. So I just want to insert that into my response. But
there's a clear sort of catch-22 there.
Absolutely, but just to reiterate your specific question about the last two officer-involved shootings, the officers did not see them.
Right. But that is the general policy, and I think that's good for the public to know. And the same thing about the confidentiality notices. So
Absolutely.
officers aren't talking amongst themselves so that IEB gets a. That's good. The one other concern, and then I'll.
Adrian, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. I want to keep it to one question.
Timing is an issue. All I want to say is timing.
Hey, Adrian.
I'm done.
Yeah, sorry. I hate to cut you off. I just want to keep it to one question and keep folks going. So Nicole, you're up, and then I'm going to start going from the chat. Alex Van Veen, I'm going to give, if you want to ask one of your questions on camera. If not, I'll choose one and read it. But your question, one of your questions will be next, Alan, and I'll give you the option. So Nicole, over to you.
Hi there. So I just want to say, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, that the Board of Supervisors decided to remove the arrest data from the website, Fairfax County Police download. And that website had that report on it, and it was updated daily. And that report fed into sites that people use to decide if they want to move into a neighborhood or whatever. And so you can still FOIA that information, in which we have. And so what I have found doing that is a large number of the things that we have complained about and brought in multiple entities in the district to deal with, such as Texas tags, car theft, carjackings. A lot of those people are not being convicted of the crimes. And so not being convicted, not pleading down, just dismissed for lack of prosecution availability. So that is part of what multiple residents I've spoken to believe is what's driving in the continuous Texas tag use, Virginia temp tag use, carjackings, and car thefts. And we looked at 20 carjackings from 2021, and 2 of the people were convicted and the rest weren't. None of them were pled down to something other like unauthorized use or whatever. And so we're watching our officers kill themselves to catch these people. Run, chase them, whatever that is, only to turn around, have this person not be convicted, and then do it again. And so part of the reason why some of us haven't pushed for those issues to be looked at anymore is because that's the trend. And we don't feel like we want to waste the time anymore. But I'd like to get an opinion from Chief Davis on, does he believe that's part of what's driving these younger people to continuously commit car theft over and over and over, or these other people to continuously use these temp tags for things like driving drunk and not driving with a license and not having insurance, and the basic reasons you use those things? Is that what you think is driving these things? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I'll say I've been doing this 30 years now, and crime trends and patterns tend to ebb and flow. And really the last couple calendar years that the National Capital Region got hit really hard with car thefts was way back in 2005, 2006. And a number of different efforts came from that, and not just from policing. The criminal justice system got involved, and there were some regional establishments of, particular prosecutors and judges that would hear these car theft cases, and even some of the more serious carjacking cases. So the criminal justice system is a three-legged stool. The police, we're certainly a part of it. Prosecutors, judges, so we all have a role to play. I think what challenges us now, Nicole, with car thefts is that our car thieves seem to be getting younger and younger and younger. And the problem with a 2022 car thief is that same young man is more likely now than in past years to carry a firearm. And when confronted, that young man is often in a position where he makes a decision to use a firearm. And then we have a horrific circumstance like we had in Annandale with the 73-year-old man who was shot and killed at the ATM machine. So it's very serious. I think the criminal justice system has to keep working really, really hard, particularly with our youthful offenders. And the question for the criminal justice system is, how do we interrupt their behavior? Right? How do we stop their behavior? How do we get them help so they don't continue that behavior? And how do we get other folks involved, like schools and the faith community and parents? It's really challenging. One person we have inside the police department is kind of acting as our ombudsman to keep us aware of all the different aspects that feed into this challenge is Shirley Ginwright. Shirley Ginwright is now working with us at headquarters, not only to develop recruiting strategies for young people, particularly young people of color, to consider policing, but she's also been very helpful to keep our eye on the ball for things that we might have a blind spot about. So that's a long answer, probably not as specific as you want it to be, but there's a lot of issues surrounding youthful offenders that the criminal justice system needs to really just keep working on.
All right,
Well,
Chief,
thank you.
I'm going to move us into the speed dating portion here and get to some of these written questions. Alex, I don't see that you've raised your hand, so I'm going to pick one of your questions. And so moving quickly here, Chief, this question is, how successful has the outside firm hired to recruit officers been?
Okay, all right, I had to say, Epic is not hired to recruit officers. Epic is a company that was under contract, and they produced that video you saw earlier. And they produced several relatively short and shorter multimedia pieces. For those who listen to WTOP, you'll hear local police and fire departments advertise on WTOP. We think our audience of police applicants probably doesn't listen to WTOP, but how do we reach them? On Instagram and on Facebook. I don't know, they're too young for Facebook.
So they're a public relations firm, not a staffing firm.
Well, they're not even a public relations firm, but they produced our multimedia infomercials that we're about to start sharing in late July, early August.
Okay. All right. Another question. We don't need to go back to the charts, but one of the questions was in reference to the charts, and there was a designation there inside the pie charts that was inactive. Can you let folks know what inactive means in your designations of the different crime percentages and categories?
I'm looking at the chart. So, and then you have cleared or closed, and then you have further investigation, which is underway. And inactive means that it's still open, but there aren't any current leads on a perpetrator or a suspect.
Okay, so it's neither of those things, but if something developed, it could move into either of those categories. Okay. All right. The next question, what are we doing about the increase in beggars and medians?
Okay, so I will I'll gently answer that question. There's a lot of legal conversations surrounding what law enforcement, not just here in Fairfax County, but anywhere, can do when it comes to panhandling, when it comes to folks who are unsheltered, when it comes to folks who are in median strips, who are soliciting money. It's very challenging. We prefer in Fairfax County, as do I think most forward-thinking jurisdictions, to afford that person services that will get him or her out of that place that they're in where they think they have to do that. So I'll maybe ask Major Coy to chime in, because he's probably more conversant on this than I am, but there are other aspects of county government that have a piece of this puzzle, and it's not an easy solution. If someone's a danger to himself or herself or others, we'll certainly take action. But the answer to vagrancy, the answer to panhandling is not a pair of handcuffs. We got to think a little bit bigger.
Just to maybe put it in like a lowest common denominator term, Chief, would it be correct to say, standing in the median and soliciting, panhandling, whatever you're doing, that's actually not illegal if you're not impeding traffic or causing a dangerous situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll ask Major Coy to expand on this a little bit, but there's a lot of legal opinions that it's actually an exercisement of one's First Amendment privilege. So there's a lot to it. And we hear the frustration, and I know the frustration. I get text messages and phone calls routinely, as I know the supervisor does.
Yeah.
But we're not ignoring the problem. We're just thinking a different way through it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chief. And really that it is a First Amendment issue, and somebody standing in the side of the roadway in a median, it's really protected free speech. What concerns us is that when somebody starts walking through traffic to pick up change through a window, then it's a safety issue, not only for the person walking through the traffic, but also for motorists. So that's one of the things we try to address at the district station. We have the Office to Prevent and Homelessness, and we provide outreach. And one of the things we tried at when I was the commander of West Springfield is we designated an officer as our as a liaison to anyone who's standing out on the side of the roadway asking for help. And we provided services, pamphlets, and we connected them with county services and to hopefully get them off the side of the street.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and Matt, if I can add,
course.
this is an item that the chairman brought a board matter a few weeks back to the board, and this item of panhandling will be discussed at a future, I think it's a transportation committee, to try to figure out what the board's position will be on it in regard to changes or recommendations later this fall. So stay tuned. The board will be addressing this later in the year.
Amir, is there anything you'd like to add to that from the chairman's side, or Supervisor Lusk pretty much summed it up?
Supervisor Lusk did great. Yeah.
Yeah, per usual. Another one, Chief, maybe a little bit easier one. This is something I got to learn about recently. What opportunities are there for citizens to participate in police work and response and learn more about the police department?
Oh, geez, you're not going to like the long answer, but I'll make it a short one. We have VIPs, we have auxiliary officers, we have volunteers at each of our district stations. There's so many opportunities to get involved. I met today with our police summer interns. We've recently just revamped that program. It was pretty dormant for a couple of years during the pandemic, but our police internship is back. Last district commanders, they want to add to that. There's so much to do, and Major Krause, you want to add to? You got bits in that too.
Yep. So in addition to the Volunteers and Police Service Program and the auxiliary program, we have a community police academy that people can attend. That's typically one night a week for about 10 weeks. We have a lot of youth offshoot programs from that: Future Women Leaders in Law Enforcement, Teen Police Academy, Future Leaders for Tomorrow. So there's a lot of avenues for people to come from the community to learn about the police department and attend more of a class. And again, as the chief said, there's many volunteer opportunities.
Chief, could someone from your team, maybe while we go forward, maybe you could send them over to us and we can put them in our newsletter later, any links where folks can sign up for those and learn more about them. That'd be great. I think we touched on this one briefly, but maybe you just really quick. Is there a specific model of vehicle that's most stolen? I know we talked about the vans and the Priuses with the catalytic converters, but any specific vehicle types folks should be looking out for?
You guys saw me out from wrong. 2004 through 2009 Priuses get hit, but they're not the only ones.
Yeah, that's more for the catalytic converter. He's talking about stolen cars.
Stolen cars. Okay.
Honda Accords, Camrys, the smaller sedans, but the ones that can, get close to 200,000, 250,000 miles on them, stay in the market. There's a market for used parts. And so it's part of it's that. It's the longevity or the use of those vehicles still being around, and they're still out there. I mean, they last a long time. And some of the locking devices in other cars are they're not as secure, I guess, in terms of that as well. So.
As we run short on time here, I'm going to combine a few questions. We have a number of questions related to safety in schools, drugs, security around schools. So can you just talk a little bit about where we are with our SRO program and what kind of things that the SRO officers are specifically focused on right now?
We're really proud of our SROs in Fairfax County. We get questions all the time. Are they staying? Are they going? They're staying. They make Fairfax County. It's a world-class SRO program. They've several of our SROs, many, if not most, have been serving at district stations during the summer months. They're getting ready to go back into school. Obviously, we've taken very seriously, particularly after Uvalde in Texas, and the absolutely inadequate police response to that active shooting. Our active violence incident training is world-class. And we spent the last year pulling every patrol squad offline for an entire night to go through what we call reaction team training. And that reaction team training just builds muscle memory in our police officers, what our community and leadership expectations are. If someone's life is in danger or jeopardy, our responsibility is to go in, act, save lives, and mitigate the threat. So those are some things surrounding schools. And again, August 4th is the opioid overdose Townhall. We'll get more into some of those issues, but parental awareness. It can happen to your child or your child's friends. Don't think it can't happen to your child, or don't think it can't happen at your child's school.
Okay. I'm gonna steal an extra 5 minutes here because we are scheduled to end at 7:30. But I'm gonna push the agenda on the questions an extra 5 minutes so we can try to squeeze some more in. We had another question. I think this might be most appropriate for the station commanders on if the stations ever pass on traffic change suggestions to the county, or for instance, passed on suggestions or do extra enforcement for areas that don't have crosswalks. And this is actually something that we just recently worked with the Mount Vernon station on with Harrison Ave. So maybe we could talk a little bit about how that process works very quickly.
Sure. The answer is yes, absolutely. And part of the value in handling these traffic concerns, like an investigation, is you have an opportunity to evaluate signage and roadway design and provide education and awareness to not just community members that live in that district, but those that drive on those roadways to get to work or otherwise. So yes, VDOT, the Fairfax County Police Department has a liaison officer assigned to share information with VDOT and work on solutions together. I relied on him today, as a matter of fact, and I introduced him to Miss Miller, who's been very active in whose engagement we rely on to stay on top of our traffic issues. So yes, signage, roadway design, awareness, education, VDOT, FCDOT, those are all factors in a solution.
Yeah, and just to provide some anecdotal feedback here, if you reach out to our office, Supervisor Lusk's office, and we'll put the contact information in the chat, we can liaise directly with the local station commanders for the crosswalk or potential crosswalk will be located. And we have been successful in getting those placed before, based solely on nothing else other than community outreach. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us about those. We had a longer question sent from Mr. Greg Kreider, but to condense it down, could you all speak generally about gun violence specifically on the Richmond Highway corridor? We've had several incidences over the last year of firearms incidents on Richmond Highway, and could we just speak generally about that?
Yes, I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Kreider before on the phone, actually right when I was walking in here. We had met at a coffee with a cop, which was good, so I got a face and a name. But yes, we have had an increase of gun violence on the Richmond Highway. We've had some unlawful discharges, stuff that's occurred. Our officers have responded. The good thing is that we've recovered evidence from the cases and we are processing them. One of our cases in the south end of Richmond Highway, a hat was recovered and we were able to collect some DNA off of that. That's been sent off to put into the database. So see if we can start closing the loop on some of these unlawful discharges. Some of the things that we're doing at the district station to try to combat gun violence is we've started a proactive patrol initiative where we take seasoned officers that some of them have come from other specialty units, narcotics units, and have our bike unit guys, some of our officers that have a little bit more experience in patrol, and they go out and they take younger officers and they treat them, they teach them how to do proactive patrol to look for criminal indicators. Year to date on the Richmond Highway, we have recovered 74 firearms. 20 of those were in a search warrant. So 54 firearms have been recovered by our patrol officers and taken off of the street. So the one thing that Shirley Ginwright and Queenie Cox was mentioned a little earlier was on August 13th, we have the Youth Public Safety Summit at the Gum Springs Community Center. And that we're trying to get at the core of where most of these issues are, is we're seeing that younger individuals are carrying these weapons. So we're trying to get into the community at a younger age to try to get ahead of this stuff and make sure that we can stop them from carrying guns, purchasing guns, or even building the relationship where they can come to us and confidentially give us information so that we can stop this violence.
Since Captain Reef mentioned it, I'll just say there are a number of events, including the one he just mentioned, that have been highlighted in the chat. So make sure you scroll through those, and maybe if our staff could kind of cull through that and drop hyperlinks for folks so they can easily register for them. I think that would be super helpful before the program ends. I'm going to do one more chat question before we do closing remarks, and it was about Bolo Wrap. Chief, can you talk about where we are with the Bolo Wrap pilot? How many are out there? When we might expect to use them more? And could they possibly be integrated with the co-responder team, since they are a less lethal? I guess there's a different term, I think, isn't there, Chief? They're actually considered a non-lethal.
Matt, it's new. They're considered a restraining device right now.
Yeah.
And just a little history on Bolo Wrap. The brother of the person who developed tasers, the electronic control weapons, and our body cameras, his brother developed Bullrep. So they're a family of entrepreneurs.
So one up him, basically,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, just think, and I don't mean to make light of any use of force or any restraining device. Just think of a spider web that comes out of a device about the size of your cell phone and literally wraps around your body probably 3 times or so, depending on your size. And we've deployed it probably half a dozen times successfully here. We're in the pilot phase right now. We're going to stick with it. And so as we get to the end of our pilot phase, we are going to procure a Bullrep. We believe it will only get better and better over time, just like the electronic control weapon when first introduced in the 90s, got better and better over time. So we think it's a safer way to take someone into custody without using impact weapons or even electronic control weapons. It's just much safer. The person does have to be standing relatively still though. And sometimes that's the case, particularly the people who are threatening suicide, they do stand still from time to time. And if we can get close and do so safely, hopefully we can use Bullrep and be one of the first early adopters in the country to say it works.
Great. Thanks for that update, Chief. So with that, Chief, I'm going to just turn it back to you for a moment. Are there any closing remarks that you'd like to make before we go to Supervisor Lusk?
Mr. Reniger and Supervisor Lusk for taking on this constant challenge of public safety in Fairfax County, just like it's a constant challenge anywhere. When you look at our challenges and opportunities, just a friendly reminder to everyone, and I have to remind myself this, our challenges pale in comparison to some other jurisdictions in the area. We're a world-class police department. We have the best training I've ever seen. We have educated and professional and ethical police officers who do this job every day. Our challenge right now that we'll overcome collectively is recruiting young people to our profession, and more specifically, recruiting into the Fairfax County Police Department. So, we're a partner with everyone on this call, and we look forward to future events where we can continue to get better. Everyone on this call makes us better. So thank you.
Thanks. And just a reminder, if we didn't get to your question tonight, we will try to get back to it in writing. So we'll drop the URL for the police updates page on fairfaxcounty.gov in the chat right now, and you can go back there and look for an updated document just as soon as we can pull all the answers together. There's quite a few questions we're going to need to still get to. Over to you, Supervisor Lusk.
Okay, I'll go very quickly. I know we only got like a couple minutes. Let me say thank you to all the participants who joined this call today. I think it was very informative, and I want to also thank Chief Davis and the team at the Fairfax County Police Department. I want to reiterate a point that the chief made, and one of the things that I've seen over the years that I've worked in Fairfax County is that this police department has created an environment where our community is one of the safest of any jurisdiction of its size in the country, something that we can all be proud of. I know, as the chief indicated, there are things that we can do better, and I appreciate his willingness to work with the community and to work with this board, and I'm committed to continue working with him as well as we continue to make reforms here in our police department. But I'm delighted that we had the opportunity to have this conversation and this discussion. If you have additional questions, as Matt indicated earlier, please send those to us via email or here through the chat, and we'll get you responses. And I look forward to continuing this conversation, because I think, it's important that we engage the community as much as we can, because we always, and this is invariably, we always get ideas on things that we can do different. So again, thank you all for being participants tonight.
I'll just say an extra thank you as well to the folks on the back end who helped pull this off tonight. Fatima Dendeshi, Heriberto Velasquez from our staff, and Chanel Green, who provided this simultaneous interpretation. So it takes a whole team, and you can't see them, but they're here and they're helping out.
And I'm sorry, Matt, I should also thank you again. Great job on the moderation. Thank you for the Q&A. So
correct. All right, we'll do more of these, and appreciate everyone taking the time this evening.